Hello, Kirk Weber from Weber Chiropractic out here in Fenelton, Pennsylvania. And I'm coming to you live on Facebook today with a healthcare topic that I think would be kind of interesting for us to talk about. If we're on here and you wish, go ahead and in the comments section toss up any questions or comments that you may have. I should be able to see those go by and address those. Please don't be afraid to share the love. You hit us with a like or even share the video with your friends. Hopefully this is good information for you, and it would be nice to share this with everyone. One of the topics that came up this past week in the office when I was working with a patient was, Doc, why do I have pain? And as we started talking about that, then they wanted to know, well, how does pain work? And I got to thinking that this might be an interesting topic for us to talk about today. Some parts of it are going to be a little bit in depth, a little in detail, but it's not nearly as bad as you think. The terminology makes it sound a little scary, but we'll go slow. We'll explain to you the terminology, but that makes it so much easier to describe what it is that we are talking about. But let's start with, why is there pain? Pain is present to alert you to a situation with your body, in your body, that is not functioning the way it should, that there's something amiss. This can be internal, as an upset stomach or a headache. It can be external, as far as a sharp discomfort or a pain. It can be a raise in body temperature, whatever. But these things all signify some type of issue that's going on inside your body, and it's an alerting mechanism to make you aware that this problem exists and that you probably should, or something is being done subconsciously to help correct the situation. Now, how pain works is a little bit different. That's a little more complicated, but we're going to go through it, and we'll go ahead and go through some of those terms for you, so that you are sure to understand what it is we're talking about. As you know, there are nerves in your body running to and from the brain. Signals move to the brain, and they move away from the brain. Okay, and these signals, as they pick up different things about our environment, as they pick up different things about what's going on inside of you or your external environment, those signals are transmitted to the brain, where they can be categorized, where they can be recorded in memory, and where different things can start to take place because of that information hitting the brain. But let's start with something very, very simple. Let's say that you went ahead and you just happened to be leaning over and you put your hand down on a hot burner on a stove. Now, when your hand hits that hot burner, one of the nerves, or some of the nerves in that hand, in those fingers, are stimulated. Okay? And that there is, at the end of that nerve, what we call a receptor. Now, there's many kinds of receptors. There's chemical change receptors, pressure receptors, pain receptors, temperature receptors. But in this case, the temperature receptor would be stimulated. That signal then moves away from that receptor towards the brain, and it's running up a nerve. So the nerve that runs from the receptor to the brain is carrying the signal away from the receptor towards the brain, and we call those afferent nerves. Now, as that nerve leaves the receptor, it's very, very small. It would be similar to you and I maybe walking a dirt path through the woods. And the further away from the receptor and closer to the spinal cord it gets, that nerve becomes more and more able to handle signals. It gets bigger and bigger. So it'd be kind of like going from a dirt path to a country lane, to a 2-lane state highway, to a 4-lane state highway, or an interstate. But once that signal gets to the spinal cord, and an amazing thing happens, because that spinal cord's now kind of like the Autobahn. 10 lanes going up, 10 lanes coming down. Everything's traveling at just a tremendous rate of speed. So when that afferent signal hits the spinal cord, something known as recruitment occurs. In other words, the signal comes in by one nerve, but when it hits the spinal cord, several different nerves are recruited to help carry that signal in a bunch of different directions. Some going to the brain for memory, some going over for cognition as you're thinking through what you need to do. Some of them are going over to register the temperature. Whoa, that's hot. Some literally jump clear across, don't even bother going to the brain, to the nerves coming back off the spinal cord back down to the area where the receptor was stimulated, okay, to allow those muscles to jump and move away. Okay, that's a reflex. Okay. So at the same time that the signal is reaching the brain, the reflex has already drawn your hand away. So recruitment allows the signal to go in a bunch of different directions at the same time. Super, super efficient system. Now, as the signal leaves the brain or leaves the spinal cord and comes back down to the surrounding tissues around that receptor, it affects, it causes a change. So those are efferent nerves. So now we have a receptor, an afferent nerve, spinal cord, brain, efferent nerve, back down to the area to cause the change. So let's change our example now from a burnt hand to maybe something like a sprained ankle. As you walk across a soft yard, soft ground, your foot hits a real soft spot, and the ankle rolls, and down you go. Now, as that occurs, that ankle rolls over, ligaments, tendons, muscles are stretched. The receptors that for pain, the receptors letting you know that the tissue has been damaged, are triggered, and the signal moves back the afferent nerve up to the spinal cord. Reflex goes down. The reflex starts not only your withdrawal of the foot out of that soft spot, but it also starts to trigger the healing response, which is inflammation, or what's known as swelling. So as you hit the ground and you roll over and look at your ankle, it's already starting to swell. That's how efficient this system is. The signal has gone to the brain, so now that you remember exactly what that pain felt like, you remember when it occurred, you remember how it occurred, you can remember, what your response was. You have a well thought out, well reasoned response, somewhat, to the discomfort that comes from it. You may scream out, you may cry, you may reach for your cell phone to dial for help, depending on where you are. So the warning system, the pain, okay, told us what to do and started the body on its own repair process. Now that inflammation shows up because inflammation, as we know, is present to help us with the healing process. Inflammation bringing in the raw materials to start the repair process, inflammation coming in to help bring fluid into the area, to the sugars, etc., to help generate new tissue, to replace the damaged tissue, as well as to remove any waste products that are built up. So, what we want to do, okay, now as physicians, is find ways to treat the pain. Now, pain, besides the immediacy of pain of an initial problem, you'll notice that sometimes the pain will recur or come back. And even after it's recurred and you come back from that as far as the healing process, the pain may come back again. And why does this occur? Well, as we start to treat initially the discomfort and pain, what we want to do, okay, is stop that signal from coming to you, to your brain and registering as pain in the pain reception center. So we do things as chiropractors to help block that. The medical community will do something more on a medicinal line to block that. But either way, we're trying to stop that pain signal from reaching the brain, and thus give you some relief. What will happen then, the next thing that happens is we stop the pain, you start to feel better, but we still have the inflammation in there. And that inflammation, that buildup of fluid, okay, if it continues, will start to put pressure on the already damaged tissue in the area. It will start to put pressure on those receptors again. It's an interesting thing. Those receptors, once stimulated, have what we call a lower threshold, right? In other words, it doesn't take as much stimulation to get a second signal to fire, right? And that's for your protection, right? That's so that you don't try to do anything too soon. You don't try to stress the system before it's really truly ready to go. So now we have a lower threshold receptor. Inflammation is starting to swell up and put pressure in the area. That pressure hits that receptor mechanically and fires a signal. Or as the inflammation starts to deteriorate, there's a chemical change which fires a chemoreceptor in that area because of that lower threshold of pain, and the pain comes back. And that's usually when the patient will call me and say, "Hey doc, first treatment worked really, really well, felt really, really good. About 2 days later, it came back. Why did it come back?" Well, that's because of the lower threshold. So the treatment should not only get rid of the immediate pain, but should be carried through to help relieve that inflammation, to take care of any secondary waves or secondary recurrences of that pain. Now, many times, okay, if you have a severe enough injury, you probably are going to need some type of rehabilitation in order to prevent a further recurrence of the injury as well. In other words, if the tissue damage was severe enough, but not so severe as to require surgery, you're going to have to do things to rebuild that tissue so that it's strong enough to support your body weight, or support your movement or your actions, if we're talking musculoskeletal problems like a sprained ankle, without tripping that receptor in its lower threshold and cause a recurrence of the pain. So most injuries that are of moderate complexity, that are musculoskeletal, should include some type of rehab so that we can strengthen the tissue. Now what we've done is we've gotten rid of the immediate pain, we've gotten rid of the secondary wave of pain because we've been able to reduce the inflammation, reduce the swelling, and then we've rehabbed the tissue so that now we prevent future recurrences from occurring as often. So this is why you have pain. This is how the pain cycle works. From a chiropractic conservative care standpoint, we are using hands-on conservative means to control this. We're using nutrition, we're using massage, we're using spinal manipulation, we're using heat and cold and things of this nature. The medical community comes at this a little differently. They will use pain blockers, medications, to interfere with that signal going to the brain and back. They'll use anti-inflammatory medications. And while those things are very good and very efficient, there is a certain amount of risk that we've blocked the ability of the body to have those signals in such a degree, to such a degree, that potential damage could occur if we don't keep the integrity of the system there. In other words, if we completely block it, damage could be done. So it's an interesting mix. It's something for you to think about the next time you have an injury. But we hope that if you have any further questions on this topic, that you'll get a hold of us. My number at the office is 724-285-9093. That's 724-285-9093. Or if you have a question, go ahead and post it on the comment section here of our Facebook site. Please be sure and Oh, hello, Harriet. Be sure and check in on our Facebook site. Um, Hit the like for us. Remember, at the end of the year, every like on our Facebook site represents a dollar donation to the local Salvation Army in our let's try to spend money and keep money at home small business aspect. Please give us a call. We'd like to talk to you about it. We'd like to do what we can to help you. Please share the video, share the love. All right, folks, until next time, this is Dr. Kirk Weber saying so long. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.